Hey, what's going on, beautiful jellyfish? It's Tracy. Thank you so much for taking a little bit of time in your day to hang out with me. I really appreciate it. And in today's video, I'm going to be chatting with you guys about 5 mono red commanders that you can run as your commander, or you can also just throw these in your commander decks. And basically what I do in these videos, because I've done a couple of these, but I've actually never done one for red, because if you've been following me for really any amount of time, you know that red is not my jam. It's just not where I shine. It really isn't. You know, I feel like I can still like appreciate a lot of the cards. It's just not a color for me, basically. And pretty much what I like to do in this video is like to go through 5 commanders and different cards you could run in them, different ways you could build them, and all that kind of stuff. I would say a really awesome website to look into is this website called EDH Rec. And this website is super great because what it does is it looks at like really popular cards that the majority of people will run in these decks when they build them. And it's super helpful. It's a great website. So I'll list in the down bar below. And yeah, let's just hop into it. So the first card I want to talk about is Lathaliss Dragon Queen. And my first initial instinct upon her and thinking about her is that I feel like typically when people think about dragons in Commander, they think about 5 mana dragons, like the Dragon, for example, at least in my play group, at least what I've seen at my game stores, is that people run the Dragon. And don't get me wrong, the Dragon is super powerful, but when you run a 5 mana colored deck, is a couple of like notes about that. Is first off, a lot of other people are doing that. And if you're someone who's not into that, Lothalus is a good option for you. And the second thing is your mana base can get a little bit tricky and that deck might be a little bit more expensive. I think with Lothalus you could build more like budget dragons, and I think that would be super cool. And so kind of like with her, she's a 6/6 flyer for 6, so you could really easily kill someone with a couple hits with her with commander damage, especially because you can pump her power with her ability, which is for 2 mana, dragons you control get +1/+0 until end of turn, so you could just pump her a lot, and the rest of your team, which is so incredibly strong. And she says, whenever another non-token, so just keep in mind it is non-token, dragon creature enters the battlefield, you get a 5/5 red dragon with flying. So she just like synergizes with herself, because whenever you play another non-token dragon, you get a dragon off of her, and you can pump those dragons that you make with her with herself, which is so incredibly good. I really enjoy the Lothalus. I think she's really good. I think you could very easily build this as like a budget deck. Cards I'm thinking of that could be really good for this is a card like Dragon Tempest, which I think should just go in like every single dragon deck, which is really good. You could also run cards like Warstorm Surge, so whenever, you know, creatures enter the battlefield, they do damage to things, which is really good. So I would say one thing to note too with her is that she has a lot of mana, and a lot of the dragons that you're running are probably going to be a lot of mana. So I would just keep in mind running a lot of mana rocks is going to be really beneficial for you. And I think you can also get away with running a lot of like colorless mana rocks, things like Thran Dynamo, for example. But I think you could absolutely build a solid budget mono red commander deck with her, and it would be really good. So I think she's very strong. I like her a lot. Okay, next card let's talk about is Purphoros, God of the Forge. Oh, I love Purphoros. He's like one of my favorite gods. So basically, his whole thing is like whenever you play creatures, whenever they enter the battlefield, also it doesn't say non-token, so it's any creature that you have. It just deals 2 damage. So my thing with Perforos is get him out ASAP. You want to play him, get him out as soon as you possibly can. And literally the whole thing with him is you could do this in a lot of different ways. My thought behind Perforos as a commander is playing like tokens. I think that would be really cool. Sorry if the frame just changed. I feel like I was really out of the frame and I was really short. My camera I think is up a little bit higher, so I just sat on a pillow. But anyways, so I think running like a ton of like token synergies, things like Dragon Fodder, for example. I think cards like that, because whenever you play things, you just ping 2 damage to each opponent. Perforos is so incredibly annoying. I feel like you're gonna really annoy your opponents with this, but that's super cool. And you can also pump your team, which is really good. Also, because you're playing him as a commander, it's really easy to get him online, because all you need to do is just get him to 5 devotion. He already has 1, so you only need 4 other devotion, and boom, there you go. You can just smack people with your commander. And when Purphoros is a creature, you can also pump him, so same thing with Lothalus. You could just pump him. He's a 6/5, a couple hits from him, and your opponent's dead. So yeah, I think I think he's like super strong, and I think you could build a really solid commander deck around him, budget or not. So cool. The next commander I want to talk about is Captain Lannery. Is that how you say it? Storm. And she is a pirate for 3. And she's got haste, which is cool. Whenever she attacks, you create a colorless treasure, which treasures are super cool. And it says whenever you sack a treasure, she gets +1/+1 until end of turn. So my kind of like thought behind this is anything that pumps you out treasures is great. And the reason for this is because you can sack those treasures that you make not just from her, and you can pump her. So my initial thing behind this is you could do like a little bit of like a pirate like theme. You could also make mono red pirates. I think if you're going to do pirates though, I think Beckett Brass is just strictly better. Like I would recommend doing Beckett Brass instead if you're looking for a pirate tribal commander, because you have a lot more leeway and a lot more cards. But if you're looking specifically for mono red, she's a really good option. And I think if you do a sort of like giving her all the sort of like equipments and enchantments and all the sort of things to pump her up and kill someone with commander damage, I think you could do that incredibly quickly. Also, she's got haste, which is great. You just pump out a bunch of treasures, you sack a bunch of them, and she gets super, super big. You know, you're playing a bunch of artifacts to buff her and just try to kill people with commander damage, I think is like your best bet with her. I think she's really cool. I think you could build her and be very budget and like a very lower power level deck if that's what you're looking for. Or I think you could make this really much more expensive and whatnot. You know, I think you could run a lot of really awesome equipments and things that would just buff her and just kill people via commander damage, which seems pretty cool. So yeah. And the really awesome thing too is those treasure tokens get you mana, so you can just play a bunch of like higher CMC stuff and just sack a bunch of your things, get the mana, and also buff her, which is super cool. She's really awesome, very strong commander. Okay, let's now talk about Grenzo, Havoc Razor. Grenzo is really interesting, and I feel like a lot of times a lot of red, I think one of my things with red is I feel like a lot of cards just do very similar things. And I think Grenzo just is different. And I really appreciate that about him. So first off, it says whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, you get to choose one, which is great. First off, goad target creature that player controls. I feel like goad is an incredibly underutilized mechanic, and I think goad is so incredibly powerful. I think it's actually, yes, it is. I'm building Reen right now, Angel of Rebirth, and actually one of the creatures in there, I don't remember what it is, but has a goad ability, and it is so incredibly strong. And so basically the really fun thing about goad is that it makes combat really tricky for other players, and basically goad says that whenever a goaded creature has to attack a player, not a planeswalker, other than you, if it is able to. And so what you can do with this is you can put people in really tricky situations where you can make someone's commander that's, let's just say, a 3/3 attack into someone's Death Toucher or something that's a much bigger than a 3/3. So you can make combat really tricky for your opponents, which I am a huge fan of, and I think that's really, really fun. And it says whenever a creature you control deals combat damage. So my thought behind that, just that first ability, is that you want to play like a ton of creatures, like a ton of things, like anything where you can just pump out like things, just do it. And so like tokens, you know, if you want to do, since he is a goblin, you want to do like goblin, because one thing too that's really cool about goblins is that they like, first off, they buff each other, and second off, they're really good at like producing other goblins, so I think that's really cool. But if you don't want to do like a goblin like, you know, like thing, you could also just do any random creatures, and that would totally work. But if you don't want to goad, you can also, or you could do a mix of both, which is really cool, so you can separate triggers, which I think is really, really great, is you can exile the top card of that player's library. Until end of turn, you may cast it, and you may spend mana as though it were mana of any color to cast it, which is so good. I really like it. I think you can do like a lot of different things with this. If you're like, I really need to like make sure that I can goad, you know, these players, creatures, or like whatever. But you can also do this ability, and I think the really awesome thing about that second ability is you can just get like a ton of really awesome stuff. And the other really awesome thing is too, is that it's just exiled. So even if you're just doing it to exile things, like, that's still really awesome, and that's still really good. Is just if you're like, you don't want to cast it, or you don't have the mana to cast it, or like whatever the situation is, you could just exile it, and it's exiled forever. And one thing too is in Commander, I mean in other formats too, but like people, you know, like will tutor for cards and put things on top, or they're playing with their library revealed, and you can just exile that, play it, or it's just exiled forever, which is so good. God, Grenzo is so incredibly strong. Okay, and the last mono red commander that we are going to be talking about in this video is Lovisa Goldeyes. Did I say that correctly? Okay, she's really cool. So she says that barbarians, warriors, and berserkers get +2/+2 permanently and have haste. So my thing is, get her out as soon as you possibly can. Play a bunch of barbs, warriors, and berserkers. You get the pump, and they have haste, and you just play those, and you just go really wide. Or you could go a little bit more narrow. My vision with this deck is you probably go more wide, and you play just like a bunch of things, but it still definitely works. I feel like there's a lot of really awesome cards that you could totally run with this, and just buff your entire team and just give them haste. Like, I don't really know, there's not like a whole lot to say about this card, but like, it's just really cool. Like, she's a really cool commander. I feel like I haven't seen this commander a lot, so if you're looking for something that's just a little bit more unique, a little bit different that other people might not have done, you know, and just search like keywords, barbs, warriors, berserkers, and just like go at it and play all the things and just buff your team and just kill people with all your things, like your 30 dudes. There you go. That have +2/+2 and have haste, which is so good. So she's really cool. So yeah, guys, that is everything for 5 mono red EDH commanders. I really hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you're planning on building any of these, definitely let me know. Let me also know your favorite mono red commanders, because they might be featured in part 2. If you guys enjoyed this video, go ahead and give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to my channel if you're not already, and I'll catch you in my next one.